neither outer tie rod end has a cotter pin in it. That wasn't in there very good. These things really should not come out that easily. Well, if I have to get my pickle fork out, I'm going to be unhappy. Howdy y'all, welcome back to Maverick Mods. Well, those of you that have watched a few of my videos have seen me disassemble a Firebird. You've seen me disassemble a Z28. You're probably wondering to yourself, does this guy ever actually fix anything? Well, once in a while I do. Today, we're going to take a break from the Firebird and the Z28, and I'm actually going to fix something. So, a few months ago, I was driving down the street behind a friend of mine, happened to notice that his muffler was dragging the ground on the car he was driving. Stopped, talked to him. One thing led to another, and a few months later, I managed to get his car in the shop, so we're going to do some work on it. So without further ado, let's get started. So here's what we're looking at today. We have a 1972 Chevelle convertible, all original, barely touched. It has had a paint job, that's pretty much it. Belongs to a friend of mine, been in his family for years. He inherited it from his father. Eventually wants to pass it down to his kids. I don't blame him. It's a great looking car. Let's take a quick look at it. Said we are all original, right down to the original hubcaps. Top's in great shape, all the glass is in great shape. Like I said, has been repainted. Straight body. I have not done the magnet test to see if there's any Bondo on it. I don't really care. It looks good. It looks fantastic. Unfortunately, doesn't drive nearly as good as it used to. That's what we're going to work on today. Continuing the walk around, let's take a quick peek under the hood. Let's see what we're looking at here. Essentially, it said bone stock, 350, 2-barrel. That's a dinky tiny carburetor there. Otherwise, really clean under the hood. So it is an air conditioning car. It looks at some point in time like the air conditioning compressor might have been replaced. Other than that, at some point in time before I got my hands on it, somebody flipped the air cleaner lid over. That really adds a lot of horsepower. Well, that's a different story. That's for a different day. We've got a couple of issues on the car that need to be addressed. One of them is relatively minor. The other two, I'd say a little bit more significant. Like I said, the car's got loose steering. We're going to try to adjust the steering box. I don't hold out a whole lot of hope on that. Generally, once these Saginaw boxes get a little bit of play in them, it's because they're wearing out or they're worn out. The adjustments are pretty much there. Assuming the box is fairly new, we're going to give it a try just to say we did, but I have a feeling that we're going to wind up having to put a gearbox on the thing when it's all said and done. The second issue is this thing just runs terribly. I went out for a test drive in the thing, and I'm telling you what, I didn't know if I was going to make it down the block or not and get back without having to have it towed back. It's got at least one dead miss. It's misfiring on at least one, maybe two cylinders. It's got several exhaust leaks, which are minor in the grand scheme of things. It's backfiring through the carburetor, and I have a sneaking suspicion I know what it is. And so I'm going to do a little diagnostics today, and we're going to see if we can't figure out just what's going on underneath the air cleaner there. Today is we've got really loose steering. I mean, that is a lot of play in that wheel. We're going to try and take some of that out. I'm going to interrupt myself for just a minute here. Even though it says on the video the steering was loose, I knew that there were some front end components worn out, but I did check, and there was a lot of excessive play in the gearbox itself. So, back to the action. Okay, let's start off the diagnostics on the steering. Just taking a look at all the components. New tires, relatively new tires. $205.70, 14s. Wow. You don't hardly see 14s anymore at all. All right, we got new brakes. That's always a good sign. Let's get a little bit of the light in here and see what we're looking at. Pretty crusty. I did check. Wheel bearings felt fairly tight. All right. You're not really going to be able to tell any play that way. I want to check ball joints, control arm bushings, and the entire steering setup. So let's start off with the ball joints. Can't check your ball joints with the suspension at full droop, or at full extension here, because everything's under tension. So let's get a jack under the lower control arm. That'll take some of the tension off of it. Alright, so we just got a little bit of weight off the suspension here. And we should be able to take our pry bar and just check for play. Okay. Upper ball joint feels tight. Let's get a light in there, see what I'm looking at here. Alright, lower ball joint feels tight. Alright, everybody's got their different method of checking tie rod ends. This is what seems to work for me. Take a pair of self-pair channel locks. Just give them a squeeze. I hope the camera can pick that up, but we've got some play in the outer tie rod end. Probably won't be able to see this. Inner tie rod is really worn out. All right, let's check the pitman arm. Pitman arm is tight. Or I should say it's actually the center link. Let's check the other side of the center link. Other side of the center link is tight. So here's what we need to replace. We're replacing the gearbox. Pitman arm is staying, and the center link is good, but the idler arm is bad. So we're going to take the idler arm loose, take loose at the outer tie rod, and at the pitman arm. And I'm going to pull that whole assembly out, put it on the bench, and then work on it from there. So, interestingly enough, neither outer tie rod end has a cotter pin in it, but I got to pull the cotter pin out on the pitman arm. Well, that wasn't in there very good, and I need to do it on the idler arm. These things really should not come out that easily. So I guess I don't need my side cutters. All right, let's pop the, grab the right wrench. Let's get the outer tie rod ends off. Well, it was tight. That's a good sign. Okay. There's one. Let go. There you go. How come you're not letting go? Well, if I have to get my pickle fork out, I'm going to be unhappy. Well, that one just doesn't want to let go. If that's the way you're going to be, I'll just do this to you. I win. Since I'm changing the gearbox anyway, rather than remove the center link from the pitman arm, I'm just going to take the entire pitman arm off because it's got to stay on the center link. Nut on the pitman arm is 1 5/16 inches, which I don't have. However, I do have a 33 millimeter, which fits perfectly. That's off. All right, with the puller. Okay, center that up. I bet somewhere in the manual it says you're not supposed to use an impact on this, but let's just see. All right, so we're loose there. All I gotta do is take the idler arm loose. And I can drop the whole steering assembly out. There we go. Steering shaft complete, loose, and ready to be rebuilt. Not sure how well this is going to work. Kind of a confined area. I've got to get the steering shaft loose. Trying to fit the camera, lights, tools, and my hands all in the same tight confined spot. And of course, this requires a 7/16 12 point, which the only one I have of those is my 1/2 inch. But feels pretty loose. All right, let's see if we can get the ratchet out of the way. Get the rest of this by hand. Or not. I thought it was loose. Yeah, there it goes. Next, I'll see if I can get the steering shaft moved up and off. There it goes. Just kind of work it back and forth, and it'll slowly slide up the shaft there. Sorry about that. Hold on, the camera is right where I need to be. Let me get that loose, we'll be right back. All right, this next step is going to get messy with the steering shaft loose. Next up, let's pop the power steering lines loose. Got a drain pan underneath. Try and catch as much of it as we can. We'll get the return line. Is this the return line? Yeah, get the return line first. I don't think any one is easier than the other. But with this out of the way, I've got a little bit better access to the other one. And there goes a lot of fluid. Alright, get the high pressure line out. Next up, we'll unbolt the box from the frame and it comes out. Last item on the agenda, unbolt the steering box. There we go. See if we can figure out how to get this thing out of here without being covered in power steering fluid. Okay, looking at the gearbox here on the bench, this is the easiest way to look at it. They're just flat in enough room down in there for my hands, tools, the camera, a light, and everything. So let's take a look at it on the shelf here. So there are two adjustments for the steering box, neither one of which really will do much good for a box that's just flat worn out. So you've got one up here, you've got an outer locking collar here, and you've got an inner ring which sets the preload and the depth of the input shaft. So basically, if I'm checking this on that box, really all I can check is there any play side to side in this shaft? Does it feel excessively loose? There's an adjustment for this, but basically it really isn't worth it. If the box is worn out, it's not really going to do you any good. Your second adjustment here is on top. This is for the output shaft. So you've got a locking nut and you've got a plunger. You just take a slotted screwdriver and you can turn it in and out. And what this does is it sets a spring preload, a spring pressure, which basically just takes up on the output shaft any play. Again, if there's play here, doing this really isn't going to do you a whole heck of a lot of good. So at this point on the Chevelle, the box is 51 years old and it's flat just worn out, so we are going to replace it. So this here is the replacement box. Alright, after a little cleanup, we'll get the new steering box in. This might be kind of fun. This thing is just a little bit heavy. Now, if I can remember how I got the old one out, that might help to get this new one in. Okay, now I'm going to try, see if I can't align that steering shaft first. That might help get this thing in. Alright, so got a flat there and a flat there. I think that was a change in my pocket from the Z28. First one. Second one. And third one. Okay, steering shaft is aligned. Let's run these bolts down gently. Torque to factory specs. Alright, now we'll get the lines hooked back up. Let's go up top for that. Alright, this is just a repeat of disassembly. And I got the same problem. There's only so much room for my hands, my tools, the light, and a camera. And there's barely enough room for my hands. Just get the right angle. Alright, that's not feeling too good. I'm not so happy about that. Alright, well, we're going to try it very gently. I don't like the feeling of those threads. Alright, well, it is going. It sure don't give you a whole lot of room down here to work on this. It's going. 1/16 of a turn at a time. Pressure line is on. Let's get the return line on, and we'll be good to go. If I can find the return line, it's down here somewhere. There it is. I know I should be talking to you guys while I'm working, but you know what? I just can't think of too many things to say. It's just a steering box. All right, plenty tight. Get the steering shaft back on next. There we go, a little wiggle, and she slid right on. Just tighten up the steering shaft. Torque to factory specs. All right, gearbox is reinstalled. Or I should say new gearbox is installed. Next up in steering renewal. Let's fix this. First thing I'm gonna do is pull the idler arm off. Let me get the box of parts out of the way. In the pile. Next up, let's transfer these tie rod ends over, inner, outer, just so that I don't lose track of which one is which. All right, this should be 9/16 on both sides. All right, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. Count the turns, which I will do. It's not a bad idea also. You can get kind of a basic idea here. We're at 18 1/8. One, 31 and a half. That's an outer. Half. One. $31. Next. All right, next one. Same as before, we'll just go the opposite direction. Hey, this one turns a lot easier. Might be able to do this by hand. And we'll take a measurement. See, that was way longer. Quite a bit longer. So we'll readjust when we get in the car. All right, so that's the inner. Okay. Do the other side, and we'll go back under the car. All right, let's go back up with the assembly. Hold on. What? There it is. See, I can't quite reach the... We get the nuts back on for the idler arm. Figures. Got the idler arm set in place. We'll go ahead and tighten it back up. I was afraid of that. I should have put the pitman arm on first. No problem. Okay. All right, with everything kind of loosely in place up here, first thing I got to do is get the pitman arm back on. Now we've got some flats around the edges, but this is kind of a pain in the ass to do this way. Okay, so we got the pitman arm back on, back in place. We could get the idler arm set. And we'll just make sure everything's loose. It is. Okay. Hard part about getting the idler arm is just getting the bolts that go through the frame, hold them in place while you push the idler arm back up against them. And get them lined up with the holes. Once you get that done, there we go. And we can get the nuts on, and we can tighten the idler arm up. Thought I was on it. Guess I'm not. Hold on. There we go. There we go. So idler arm is tight. Next up, we put the nut and the washer back on the pitman arm. I think that's probably tight enough. You think? Alright, so we get the tie rods in on the outers. There's one. Alright, now I'm going to leave these loose because I'm betting I'm going to have to do some adjusting just even to get it to the alignment shop. We'll do kind of a backyard toe setting. Alright, right where I need to be. This one. There you are. Okay. Right there. Maybe do one more on this one. Nope, that is where it needs to be. Okay. Alright, so the inners are done. Let me get the cotter pins in there. Alright, before we let it back on the ground, one of the things I do need to do is, since we replaced the steering box, put some power steering fluid in it and cycle it a few times, try and bleed some of the air out of the system. I got it pretty close, but I still got to bleed the system, so. And to do that, with everything hooked up, just spin the wheel lock to lock 3, 4, 5 times. Check the fluid again. Okay. Pretty good. We'll check that again once we get the motor running. But got it bled enough for now. If all this work is done in an alignment shop, this next step is not really required. However, we have to drive to the alignment shop. So what I'm going to do next, go ahead and get the wheels back on it, and we're going to eyeball the toe because it needs to be sitting on the ground at right height, just to make sure. But I'm going to eyeball the toe, make a few subtle adjustments, and I'll show you how to do that. But first, got to get the wheels back on. Alright, wheels back on. Let's drop the car off of the jack stands. Okay. Bounce her a few times. Kind of make sure we're sitting close to right height as we can. Now, with the wheel close to centered, I'm going to grab you real quick. So let's take a look at what we got here. With the wheel close to centered, we can tell that we've got a lot of toe out here and a lot of toe out here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to sight down the rear tire to the front tire, make a few adjustments, and you'll kind of see what I'm doing as I adjust it. To kind of get a ballpark on the toe, I left the adjuster loose. So what I'm going to do, I've got the steering wheel centered and locked with the steering lock. So I'm just going to sight down. You can really see, and that was counting equal turns, just how off that was. So all I've got to do is just tighten up the adjuster, and I'll watch that tire, and I'll bring that tire closer to in line. just got to figure out which way is which. Okay, that's bringing it in. Okay, I'm gonna check the other side real quick. Make sure I haven't moved it. Okay, again, which way is which? That's out, that's in. So go up on this one. All right. With the lighting, I'm not sure you can see this, but you can eyeball down the car to just about right there, and you see how the tire disappears, and there is just a hint of out still. If you just right, you can just barely see the rear tire, so you need to go in a little bit more. Okay, now that actually went just a little bit too far. But I'm going to leave that for now. Check the other side. Eyeball down the tire right there. Still got a little ways to go. Getting close. About two more turns, maybe 3. And we're there. I'm going to back this one off just a little bit. About right there. And let's call it good. We'll lock the adjusters down. And there, we've got the toe at least close enough that we don't wipe out the tires in the half-mile drive to the alignment shop. Well, all the worn-out steering components on the Chevelle have been replaced. I've got the toe set close enough to make the three-quarter mile drive down to the alignment shop. Can't quite take it to the alignment shop yet because I haven't fixed whatever's wrong with the motor. So next time you see the Chevelle, we're going to get back under the hood. We're going to dig into the engine and just see what's going on with that. Sure do appreciate you watching. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. It sure would help me out. And everybody, have a good day.